Hey, so ladies and gentlemen, we're back. If you haven't had an opportunity to watch the Game of Thrones episode called First of His Name, stop listening now. Major spoilers, here we go. Cersei and Tywin plan the crown's next move. Dany discusses future plans. Jon Snow begins a new mission. We're talking about Game of Thrones and tonight's episode that aired tonight, May 4th, aka Star Wars Day 2014. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. It was one of the best episodes of Game of Thrones, alright? I've been asking for a very long time, man, that Hodor get some action, man, because he's such a big guy. He's a big character on Game of Thrones, and you can't miss him, man. As soon as he starts going, Hodor, you know, you just absolutely, you love him, and you're like, man, this is one of the greatest characters on Game of Thrones. So, tonight, he got his moment, man. It was crazy, man, because I'm going to start there. I'm going to start right there in that area, and then we'll kind of branch off and go in other places. But we're inside of Craster's Keep. Bran, Mir, Hodor, Jojen, they're all tied up inside of this little building. And the guy that cuts off Jaime's hand is actually inside of the cabin with these guys, okay? He doesn't let Jon Snow know that his brother, Bran, is actually inside of the cabin. He tells Jon Snow to stay away from the cabin because there's wild dogs in there. And if we go near the cabin, it might make the dogs bark, and then it'll give up their position or whatever. And he lies, man. And it gets you kind of nervous a little bit because obviously we're talking about Game of Thrones, and you don't know if they're going to... if they're going to pull a fast one on us again and either A, kill off another character, B, torture somebody, or something bad's going to happen, okay? So you're nervous. The guy named Locke, he comes up to Bran, he cuts him on his left or right leg because Bran wouldn't give him his name, okay? But Locke, immediately recognized him. He cuts Bran in his leg. Bran obviously didn't feel anything because he can't use his legs. And he picks Bran up. Before he picks him up, though, he says, if you make a sound, I'm going to slit the throats of Hodor, Mir, and Jojen. And Bran's like, okay, I'll be quiet. And then, Locke picks him up on the shoulders, takes him outside. All of a sudden, man, as he's picking Bran up, and he puts him over his shoulder, you see Bran, start to use his magical warg powers, and his eyes roll back to the back of his head. They go white, this dark cloud gray, and all of a sudden, you're like, okay, maybe he's just doing this because, he wants to go to another place, so he won't feel anything if he's going to be tortured by Locke or whatever. But that's not the case, man. His eyes go gray. All of a sudden, the camera pans over or cuts over to Hodor, and Hodor's eyes go gray. You see where I'm going here, right? Yeah. All of a sudden, man, Hodor, the whole entire time, he's just rocking. He's like, Hodor. He's rocking back and forth. He's rocking Hodor, hitting his head against the back of the wall, trying to escape the chains, but he's not really trying to break free. He's just, nervous, man. He's Hodoring. And all of a sudden, man, he goes into that warg state, and then Hodor, he stops Hodoring. And then he just rocks back and forth. He breaks the chains. He gets up and he chases after Locke, and then it's like, it's happened so fast, man. It's so scary because, Hodor is so big. He's like Andre the Giant. And he grabs Locke, Bran falls to the ground. He grabs Locke, picks Locke up with one hand into the air. Hodor's like, 7 feet tall. He picks Bran up. Now Bran's like 10, 11 feet in the air. Grabs his neck. He just holds him, and then he grabs his head and he snaps his neck. He snaps his neck so violently that he actually snaps his head off of his shoulders, but it's still attached through the skin. But he breaks the bone through the shoulder blade, through the left or right shoulder blade. There's a huge bone that's popped out. It's his collarbone. It's his neck bone. It's his spine. I mean, I can't even really describe it. Besides, you gotta see this. You have to. You have to see this to believe it, man. It just kind of shows you, man, like, Hodor, yeah, he might, be special or whatever. He might not do a lot. All he can do is pretty much, protect Bran. But if this guy can be used, man, he's going to wreck shop, man. I'm talking about there's nobody can stop him, man. He's almost like, I guess you could say, let's go with that. Let's go with the Incredible Hulk analogy, man. He's that powerful, man. Oh, I was like, wow. I was just blown away, man. Locke's body drops to the floor. He's dead. And then, Bran tells Hodor, man, to go and, release Mir and Jojen. And then we get to this moment where Bran is kind of crawling on the floor, man. He's, obviously can't walk. He's crawling on the floor, with his elbows, and he's crawling across the snow, and he's looking up, and he sees his brother fighting, man. He sees Jon Snow, and he yells out, he's like, Jon. And then all of a sudden, Jojen comes up, and he's like, listen, Bran, if you say this, if you get Jon's attention, then Jon's going to stop you from your mission. He's like, he said, don't you want to see the three-eyed crow? And then Bran, listens to Jojen, and they have to continue on with their mission, which is not going with Jon or not listening to Jon or not allowing Jon to stop that mission. They're heading to this weirwood tree where the goal is that in the end, Bran will end up at this weirwood tree where I guess maybe he's going to meet the three-eyed crow. I have no clue, but that's the goal right now. And you got to see this crazy, I don't know how to even describe this. It was almost like an outer body experience to where Jojen started to do his warg, but he wasn't warging, you know what I'm saying? He wasn't on his warg. He was almost like daydreaming, if you will. And they're inside of that Craster's Keep little house, little hut, and all of a sudden the back of the hut turned like falls down, and you see this open area where this weirwood tree is growing, and it's like this beautiful sun, and I can't even really describe it besides saying like, what was that? And there was this moment where Bran and Jojen, they start to, he's like, oh, you know where that weirwood tree is? You've seen that before? And they start, kind of talking back and forth. And then all of a sudden, man, Jojen's hand turns to fire. Because Mir asks, he's like, because obviously Jojen can see the past, the present, the future. He can see all that. He has like some kind of magical powers or whatever with it. Maybe he's warg. Maybe, I don't know what he is, but he sees something crazy. And she asks him, how will we know when it's the end? All of a sudden the dude's hand, Jojen, his hand catches on fire. And it's literally on fire, man. And it was just crazy, man. After all that stuff happened, Jon Snow has a epic battle, man, with Carl. All of a sudden, man, they're going at it, man. It's almost like something out of Star Wars. I'm not gonna lie about that. Even just because of Star Wars Day, I was watching episode 1 through 6, and it was just crazy. There was just so many lightsabers and stuff, and that's what that tonight's episode felt like for Game of Thrones, because Carl and Jon Snow are going back at it. Jon Snow gets stabbed in the thigh it's like in the thigh all the way through the butt. If that makes sense. It's kind of weird, but he stabbed him through there, man. You can see the sword and everything. And, Jon Snow's on the ground. Carl's standing over him. He's kind of telling him about, experience, and that, Jon Snow doesn't have the experience, and he's better because he's evil, and that he'll do anything to win. And then all of a sudden, one of Craster Keep's girls, man, comes up behind Carl, stabs him in the back, towards like the back of his shoulder blade, if you will. And then, Carl turns around, he pulls out the knife. He's like, you little. And he starts chasing the girl a little bit, going after her, about to kill her. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the sword of Jon Snow, listen to this, the sword of Jon Snow. Jon Snow's sword goes through the back of Carl's skull, through the back of his skull, through his mouth, opens his mouth up, breaks his teeth off, like his front teeth, his bottom teeth, opens his mouth as the sword comes through. And then he pulls it back out. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't see it coming. I thought he was going to get stabbed in the back or through the stomach. No, man. Jon Snow stabbed this dude through the face, like the back of the head, touch the back of your head, and then open your mouth. That's what happens. As soon as you touch the back of your head, your mouth opens, the sword goes in, it gets yanked out, and then Carl's body drops to the ground. And then obviously that's the end of the episode. It was just crazy, man. Not really the end of the episode, but that was like nearing the episode. You only had like 30 more seconds left. What happened at the end of the episode, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Craster's Keep is no more. It was burned down. And then Jon Snow, obviously he has freed the women of Craster's Keep. He invited them to come back with him, but they decided not to. And they just said, burn the place down. And that was the end of the episode right there. And Jon Snow has also been reunited with his direwolf, which was just awesome. Let me see what else. I want to stop here. That's about 10 minutes. Let me stop here because I'm going to actually break this up into a couple parts because I'm going to be talking a whole lot about different stuff. So I'm going to break this up. And I'll upload, obviously, I'll piece these together to where you can listen to the whole entire thing. But that's it, guys. Thanks again for listening, man. We're out of here.